This week's program, Gary D20 has a take about as smart as something that goes crunch on my shoe. Vearos overreacts and underperforms. NobleShield noble simps for the cartoon ladies while failing to understand his own persona. Night Danger's creativity needs training wheels. Old school gamer either has a time machine or an empty skull, I'll let you decide. And VSE is retarded with his burning straw man. That's right, folks. It is time for intelligence as a dump stat here on Driving and Dragons. I'm your host, Daniel, and this is where we take the piss out of the kind of hot takes one finds at the bottom of a urinal. Be sure to give me all the YouTube love with the likes, hypes, and subscriptions so that we can build our little tabletop gaming rally to 1,000 subs. Share the video with your friends and add your thoughts in the comments below. And remember that channel members, Patreons, people who share those little jewels on mobile, and super chatters all help me build cool cars for others to one day enjoy. So, let's get down to business. Most of you know that I'm a 3.5e guy when it comes to D&D, so to say I'm without bias on the topic of crunch would be a little disingenuous. However, historically speaking, all the games that have endured and found lasting success are at the bare minimum fleshed out systems. Every edition of Dungeons & Dragons from white box to 5.5e is well above average in terms of crunch. So is Call of Cthulhu, so are the Palladium games. Even the poster child for successful story games, Vampire the Masquerade, has a third or more of its 300-page rulebook dedicated to system information. So when Gary D20 Games drops a stinker like, if the character sheet can't fit on an index card, the game is too crunchy, down with crunch, I tend to take notice. I take notice because this is idiotic. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of one-page RPGs out there, and 99% of the TTRPG commentators online couldn't name one without stopping to think about it for several seconds. Because the more rules like the system, the less staying power the game has. Crunch allows for versatility and adaptability without the GM basically having to write their own game to make it work. And in case you missed it, good systems aren't designed for players, they're designed for game masters. GMs are the ones working under the hood, while the players are just along for the ride. And you get morons like Gary out there spouting nonsense like, we don't need engines, put a hamster and a wheel under the hood, it's so much better. Of course, Gary isn't the only one with an ignorant take on the gaming mechanics this week. You also have the twin-headed dumbass of Vearos and NobleShield. Two tards who use the same idiotic idea about paladins on the battlefield of pathetic cartoon boob worship. So here's the background, guys. Isabelle Martel is a gooner bait retarded AI anime chick profile. You know, the ones that post nothing burger crap like, oh, I have to go to work again, gee, I hate work, but have hundreds, if not thousands of followers because they include a picture of a cartoon girl in their work uniform with triple F cleavage. Yeah, one of those profiles. But I respect the hustle, and will continue hating the game instead of the player, as she milks engagement from pathetic incels on the 5e sphere on X. Well, old Isabelle posted a whine about how it always bothered her that D&D paladins had to be lawful good. Vearos of Vearos Gaming chose to attack Isabelle over this comment, stating, at this point, I think this person is just grifting. Like actual grifting. Okay, it's a bit of an overreaction, but I sympathize. I absolutely detest the engagement farming, valueless animu titty accounts that parade around like they have something to offer. Pile them all inside Tiefling Chick Tavern and set that bitch on fire and I wouldn't shed a tear. We solved this problem 20 years ago, made it even less distinct 12 years ago. Even in 3.5e, it was very common to house rule to just be a paladin of whatever god. Hello? And there it is. The low IQ, let's redefine the word take. While we're at it, why does a fighter have to use physical attacks to do damage? Why can't we just have a fighter that we house rule to use spells instead? He could use intelligence to get more powerful spells with higher saves and maybe give up an attack bonus because he's focused on magic. You know, as long as we're redefining words, let's just redefine what fighter means. Because paladin has a meaning, and that meaning is not fighter cleric who goes to church. We can all see who didn't house rule that intelligence would be an important stat for them. Of course, the AI-generated cartoon damsel in distress needed a white knight to charge in through the Cheeto dust on his rascal scooter to save her from the attacks, and that's where NobleShield comes in. She's not farming engagement so she can grift by bringing up a dead topic like it still matters, you see. This paladin alignment thing is still a major topic in the TTRPG world, and how dare you attack that sweet innocent set of digital memories. There are far too many people who think a paladin must be lawful good and human, because that's how it was in the old days. No, Nimrod Shield. It isn't because that's how it was in the old days. It's because that's what the damned word means. Paladins are derived from a borderline mythological group of knights under the Holy Roman Empire who were said to exemplify knightly and Christian virtue. Those virtues are the actual basis for the lawful good alignment. Paladins are not just knights. They are not just holy warriors. They are the personification of the lawful good alignment. Now, I'm with you on the human part, but any argument that they should not be restricted to lawful good means you don't actually want to play a paladin. You just want a fighter who has some unearned powers. What's even worse is that you run around with a paladin as your online mascot profile picture, and you clearly don't understand what one is. If only there were some good books out there where you could, read what heroes are supposed to be like. Where good guys stand on ideals and bad guys try to find the shortcut, like house ruling that you don't need to pay your dues to get abilities. I do know where you can find 7 such tales, right here in the 168 pages of Corvid Codex Volume 1. That's right, folks, Corvid Codex is slowly but surely catching on as the local game shops and booksellers are starting to pick it up and put it on display for the world. But you don't have to be near a city where one of the authors lives to get a copy. You can grab one off Lulu in rich PDF digital format or stunning 6x9 trade paperback. So get one today and let me know which one of the stories was your favorite. In Burrow SR adjacent news, Night Danger is once again in danger of exposing the lack of intelligence that particular movement is characterized by. Now you see, Night Danger isn't a stupid man as far as I can tell. He browns his roux slowly and doesn't blaspheme his gumbo by adding okra or tomato, and often has some thoughtful things to say about gaming. But then he also says really, really stupid stuff, like a few months into Warhammer Fantasy role-playing, and I gotta say it has great combat, but in every other respect is incomplete. When he was asked to expound upon this claim, Nitwit Danger claimed the campaign tools are absent. There are no tables and charts to stock dungeons and generate random encounters. Without modules, you can't sustain a campaign. What you mean is that without a brain, you can't sustain a campaign. This is the poison of zero prep obsession, people. You think a game is incomplete because it gives you tools to build a campaign instead of blocks to assemble one. Night Danger probably walked out to his bicycle and bitched that it was an incomplete bike because the training wheels weren't on. If you get some notebook paper and number it 1 to 20, and then write different possible encounters next to each number, it looks suspiciously like a random encounter table, but one that actually fits the world you're playing in and the campaign you're working on so that all the encounters make sense. Hell, if you draw a square on that paper and put several smaller symbols in that square, then notate what those symbols mean in the margin, you can have a dungeon room map completely stocked with stuff the players can interact with. And if you do this a whole bunch of times in a bunch of different ways, your characters can go from room to room exploring for session after session for years. It's almost like incomplete is being redefined as the game doesn't play itself for me. The next imbecile in a long line of morons this week is one of the alumni featured in the You Missed the Joke meme that opens every Intelligence is a Dumpstat episode? Old school gamer. When he isn't talking to his AI-generated co-host on Rumble about how great he is, OSG is typically on X reminding us all of the other reasons none of us watch his podcast. That reason, of course, is that he's an idiot. OSG tends to be this odd collection of all the worst stereotypes from various parts of the hobby rolled into one and then amped up to 11 with the one true wayism virus. Think of him as part of the same tapestry that gives us J. Scott Garibay and Condor. And Condor is an angry victim, Garibay is an oblivious idiot, and Old School Gamer is a bitter, conceited zealot. But they all lived their lives making the same mistakes over and over, insisting that the multitudes who point their errors out are actually the ones who are wrong. Oh yes, and combining the three of them, they still don't average 100 views per post across all platforms. Well, OSG weighed in on Dark Sun, and he did it with a virtue signal to the old school gaming crowd. The issue is, he did it in a way that no one can respect. The people inclined to agree, they just want him to shut up, because takes like this actually serve to invalidate their concerns, while the people who are against him point out that he's clearly speaking out of his ass and not in good faith. How so? Well, this is how. Dark Sun Remake is shit. It's overwriting a file, censorship of the original, a shot fired in the culture war. And you know what? He may be right. But none of us actually know. Why? Because unless this dipshit has a time machine, he hasn't seen the Dark Sun remake. It isn't out yet. They just announced its development and they targeted it for 2027. So while saying that I have no faith in WotC or saying that I'm certain that they will mess this up are both perfectly logical and sustainable positions to take, declaring what something is before it has even been outlined is just blowing smoke so you can turn around and yell fire. You don't know. You haven't seen it. This isn't crying before you're bit. This is asking for anti-venom when you don't even know there's a snake in the garden. And just so you're here, just so you're aware, old school gamer, your culture war cries are laughable. Dark Sun was part of the culture war before the culture war was called the culture war. Dark Sun was an Al Gore, extinct polar bear level environmentalist doomer fantasy from the start. It was always a propagandistic work. That's why I have always laughed at Wizards of the Coast for hiding it, because those virtual signaling nitwits didn't even understand they were calling their own propaganda a problem. Or problematic, I believe, is the word they love so much. Moral of the story, don't go flapping your gums about a product that isn't even out yet, as if you've somehow seen it and know what it is. You just look stupid. Like a guy who hosts a podcast with an AI avatar blowing smoke up his skirt for a viewership of 2 people. I'm telling you, folks, the Dark Sun discussion is heating up faster than these dog days of August. And that can only mean one thing. It must be summer. White Dwarf summer, to be precise. Patty of Patty's Parlor brought us the spectacular cover of Corvid Codex Volume 1. He got us the answer to the most pressing of all TTRPG questions. What does Deathbringer drive? By the way, it's a Mustang muscle car. Monster truck. So, muscle car, Mustang, monster truck. Now, he is bringing all of you premium swag with custom artwork that you can rock at the beach or at the lake. You have to be this tall to ride the ride, but the shirts come in all sizes, so grab one at the link below. We finished things off today with one of the most widely banned ass wagons in the classic gaming space. Violence solves everything. I don't really have to parse words here. If there is a more widely reviled personality in the TTRPG sphere than Condor, it's VSE. This guy has managed to get him banned. He's managed to get himself banned from every channel and chat on the web except for maybe Nerd Cognito. Largely, it is because he's an asshole who likes to pick fights with absolutely everyone and yell free speech as an excuse to use unacceptable slurs against show hosts, panelists, and moderators. He's also the kind who goes to the stream that he's banned from just so that he can scan for reasons to snipe at people over on his own X feed. You know, because everyone else has banned him from comment sections and chats. Just heard an RPG opinion that makes me vomit. The GM should never be rolling dice. Only the players should be rolling dice. This is, of course, a straw man version of something Bear the Gen X GM said over on Legion of Myth. Bear basically laid out the idea that in game design, minimizing the GM's rolling of dice should be the goal. Set target numbers, let the players do the rolling. And I agree in principle with Bear, but even he would likely admit that GMs never rolling dice would be impractical, if not unachievable, in the current meta of tabletop games. Of course, VSE is banned from chat on Legion of Myth streams because he likes to cuss out mods in chat, so he took his stupidity to X. Now, it isn't actually the overreaction to Bear's comment that lands this imbecile here. It's the fact that his detestable waste of breathable air does this at all. He lurks in streams looking for opportunities to attack people purely out of spite. Not to add anything to the conversation, not to make anybody think, not even to mock, just to be spiteful and stupid. He's almost like the bitter, angry, retarded, not at all satirical version of intelligence is a dump stat. Add to that he isn't even funny, and VSE really is a headache-inducing pox on the ass of the hobby. So don't be like VSE, folks. Find something better to do with your time than turning your X thread into the comment section of all the places you've been kicked out of. Maybe take some of the BC headache powder. That stuff is awesome, and I'm sure it can help with butt hurt too. But that's what I got this time, folks. Have a good night. Be here on Thursday when Bear, the Gen X GM, joins me on driving the conversation. And I'll see you guys next time.